Hello, it's Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and this is Admissions Live. I am your host, Nicole Lentini, and today on the show I'm speaking to Gil Rogers, Director of Marketing and Outreach at Chegg Enrollment Services, for a special preview of the annual Social Admissions Report, an in-depth publication on trends of student use of digital tools and social media throughout their college search. Gil will provide insights into how trends have shifted over the past 3 years leading up to the release of Chegg's first Orange of 2015 in conjunction with their partners at University. Admissions Live is part of the Higher Ed Live Network, a series of professional development web shows and podcasts which are always free and accessible to you in the archives at higheredlive.com and on iTunes. Be a part of our broadcast by tuning in live and sharing your insights and questions using the Higher Ed Live hashtag on Twitter. You can receive weekly updates with live show dates and times by subscribing to the Higher Ed Live newsletter. Today's show would not be possible without the support of Champlain College and M. Stoner. Higher Ed Live is produced by M. Stoner, a marketing and communications firm that works with education institutions on branding, strategy, web design. Admissions Live is also sponsored by Abilene Christian University. Face it, from the very beginning of your career, you've never had that professional stamp that says you're an expert in enrollment management. Well, now you have that opportunity. Abilene Christian University's new graduate certificate in enrollment management provides 4 highly interactive online courses that can be completed in as little as 10 months. Combined with a unique residency component, the program is designed to help enrollment management professionals expand their knowledge and give them a credential to set themselves apart in the field. Visit acu.edu/enrollment management to learn more. Admissions Live is also sponsored by Chegg Enrollment Services. Admissions Live is sponsored by Chegg, and they're helping us to save time, save money, and recruit smarter. Today's show is a preview of their upcoming webinar titled Selfies, Snapchat, So What? The 2015 Social Admissions Report, which is the 4th installment of their annual research on how students use digital, social, and mobile tools throughout their college search. You can sign up for the webinar using the link we're posting on Twitter, or simply visit edu.chegg.com for more details. Admissions Live is also sponsored by Welcome to College. Welcome to College helps higher education institutions optimize the highest leverage decision point in the college search process, the college visit. Their web platform and professional services are giving colleges innovative tools to enhance how they are connecting with prospective students before, during, and after the college visit. They allow students and schools to connect on key indicators of student flourishing, meaning, accomplishment, relationships, and vitality, or MARV. All right, so with all of the sponsors shared, I can turn the show over to Gil. And it's wonderful to have you on the show, Gil. You know, we've been friends for years, but I don't think I've actually gotten the opportunity to be a host on a show that you're on.
I know. We might not even talk about the actual topic, because all we'll do is talk about meeting at college fairs and stuff.
This is very, very true.
Is it okay if I leave my hashtag Gil hat just like this the entire time, or?
I don't think it would be a show without the hashtag Gil hat. So
yeah, I'm hoping that we hashtag break the internet with hashtag Gil. So.
Well, we'll see what our viewers can do with hashtag Gil. Hopefully, we can get
I'll take it out. That way, we can see my. This is what break the internet is, my face.
So. Exactly, exactly. So, Gil, I know that we have a lot to talk about, but do you mind just sharing with our viewers just a brief little bit of history of your time in higher ed and kind of how you ended up where you are and where you're going with it?
Yeah, so, well, we have 56 minutes left, so I'll talk for 52 on my background. So, yeah, I mean, I got into higher education like a lot of us do. You know, I didn't want to get a real job when I graduated from college, so I found my way into working in admissions. You know, nobody goes to college for admissions. You just kind of end up there. So I started at the University of Hartford, where I was an admissions counselor for a couple of years. After doing that for 2 years, you know, I had an opportunity for professional advancement at the University of New Haven, also in Connecticut, where I was there as an assistant director through associate director. At that point, you know, after being there about 5 years, I decided, you know, it'd be a great opportunity to work for 1,000 schools instead of one school. So I took a job as director of marketing at Zinch, which was acquired about 5 months later by Chegg. I'm still here, so I must have been doing something right. And from there, you know, I've just kind of stayed at Chegg. You know, the opportunity at Chegg is really a great one to be able to help students save time, save money, and get smarter, help colleges save time, save money, and recruit smarter, and really just support student outcomes. You know, everything from the college search and selection process. This is what I'm passionate about. If you look at my LinkedIn profile and see what I post about and all that sort of stuff, through careers, services, and internships, being able to kind of get insights and clarity into all that is something that I'm really interested in doing. So. And then, part of why I'm here is we do our annual study with our friends at Uversity on social media, digital tools, what that means for higher education and enrollment managers. So one of the really fun parts of my job is I get to focus on doing our research that fuels a lot of the stuff that we publish for conferences and Orange Notes and that sort of thing. So really happy to be here, excited.
Excellent. Well, and I'm glad that you put in a plug for your LinkedIn post, because I was going to do the same. I know you've put some really vital stuff out there, some controversial stuff too sometimes, but I think you're really kind of pushing the conversation about higher education and admissions and marketing to students. So I'm glad you mentioned that. But you also mentioned Orange Notes, and so I know that the Social Admissions Report is a portion of kind of Orange Notes that you guys are doing for this year. So can you tell us a little bit about what Orange Notes are?
Yeah, so Orange Notes are kind of Chegg's enrollment services term for white papers. So, white papers are very, stodgy and very specific and particular. And I feel like the term Orange Note is a little bit more flexible. So we get to do things like full white papers, which will be publishing the Social Admissions Report next Tuesday is when it will be released after the webinar that you can sign up for via the link we posted on Twitter, #HireEdLive, #SoCAD15. So Orange Notes can be a full white paper. It can be tip sheets, which are quick, digestible, easy to understand versions of our research, easy to distribute. We actually already did publish a tip sheet for the Social Admissions Report that's broken into 3 main sections, and it's really easy for you to just download, pass around your office, that sort of stuff. It can be guides and user guides and best practices brochures. So Orange Notes are really just our kind of flexible term of not being limited to one specific format, really to be able to distribute content that we produce throughout the year. Because at Chegg, we are in constant dialogue with students. We reach 8 and 10 students who are researching schools online for their college search. Mm-hmm. We're renting textbooks to students throughout the year. We have students coming to us for Chegg study and internships and all that sort of stuff. So it's almost our responsibility to continue to have that dialogue with students and to pass our findings on to schools. So, and you mentioned that what I put on LinkedIn sometimes can be controversial, and I feel like what I do is I share thoughts on just kind of my opinions and look for feedback and want to have a conversation, Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to say that I'm always right, and I'd love to have a dialogue with people that think I'm wrong, and that's great too. So we can kind of, because what's right is what's best for students, and whether it's how you're recruiting them to how you're retaining them to how you're supporting outcomes, it's really about finding the right piece at each phase of that process. So Orange Notes, to give you the short answer, that's what they are, is ways for us to be able to distribute our findings of our conversation with students in any format that is applicable to how enrollment managers can consume it.
Awesome. And I know that we appreciate it out here in the higher ed side of it, because it's so hard to really do adequate research on our own. So the fact that organizations like yourselves and like Uversity are doing this kind of research is huge. So hopefully people will check out the webinar coming up on January 27th and sign up for that. So since we talked about Orange Notes as a whole, of course we want to break down the Social Admissions Report, what we're doing the show all about. And so I know when you and I spoke a little bit about it, you mentioned the breakdown of it into really social admissions falls into 3 main areas. And so can you talk a little bit at kind of the higher level, and then we'll dig a little bit deeper of what those 3 areas are and sort of what kind of tools and what kind of what sort of, access points fit into each of those? Yeah,
so I think it's important when we talk about social admissions to really think about it as digital recruitment and how students are using different properties online. So I feel like a lot of times anything that's digital can be bucketed as social media, and social media can be categorized as digital. But I think what we need to do is really break them into different categories to distinguish between what students are using them for and at which phases of their college search. So a good example of this is Chegg. A student can go onto Chegg and research colleges and look up, compare schools side by side and look up scholarships and all that kind of stuff. that's not Chegg isn't a social media site. It's a digital resource that students use for those types of things. Whereas Facebook, a student can go onto Facebook and find a school's page and like the comments and post and share things and that sort of stuff and connect with other people. And I think that's the distinguishing factor, is the connecting with other people piece that really differentiates. So when you're an enrollment manager and you're trying to think about who should be responsible for these types of things and who's in charge of this different stuff, there is a difference between digital tools and social tools. And I think just kind of drawing that distinction a little bit more clearly is important when you're building your enrollment strategy. What is your digital marketing strategy? What is your social strategy? And then what is your mobile strategy, which would be kind of that third bucket. All of these are linked and interconnected, which is important. But it's just important to understand that Chegg, University TV, College Week Live, etc., are not social networks, just like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube are not college search sites. They're just two different things. So really what the social admissions report does is breaks those down into those three categories and talks about what tools students find most valuable within those categories, and most importantly, what they use them for.
Okay. Thank you very much for clarifying that a little bit, because, yeah, I think it's just so easy to sort of lump anything that exists on the web into social media, but it's true. They're very different spaces. They're very different strategies that we need to be kind of moving forwards with. And so talk to me a little bit then about, maybe one of the components of this. I mean, we talked, I loved the quote that you shared about Facebook. It really stuck with me, that Facebook is that awkward family reunion that you can't leave. Yeah. And I just loved that idea. So what are you seeing happening over in kind of that social media component, as far as the way students are searching for information? What are they actually looking for there? What are they using it for?
Yeah, and I think I've been kind of beating the drum at conferences and via webinars for the past couple of years that Facebook is not dead. I think every 6 months there's a new article by the New York Times or Huffington Post or whatever that Facebook is dead. I heard Twitter was dead a few months ago. Email's been dead for years. Long live email. So there's. I feel like Instagram is going to be the next one to go, just because that's so popular right now. It's going to die tomorrow. So, and that's where it is important when we talk about the different social platforms and the different digital platforms that, they do come and go, and it's important to stay current on what students are using and what they're not using and what's involved, because inevitably what happens is you have to strike this balance between being an early adopter, which is a good thing, to chasing every shiny new object that comes out because it's a fun tool. And I've been there, right? When I ran the social media outreach for University of New Haven, we were on everything. We did everything, and I thought it was so cool. Oh my gosh, look, we have students on High Five. Oh look, we have an Orchid account. We have all this stuff. And why? Because they're free and they're easy, and they're easy to set all these things up. But then once you have them all set up, you have to manage them. So the social section, what we focus on is really what the current tools that students use are. And you mentioned the point of Facebook is that awkward family reunion that you can't leave. That was actually an article published by a student, which I'll look up and tweet out afterwards. But it was a high school student's views on social media. But we do have to be careful though when we look at it's not what they're currently using just in their general daily life, but it's for our purposes what they're using to review college information, and that's I think where we get a little bit challenged with how we build our strategy. Is yes, Facebook has been declining year over year in active usership since we started doing the social admissions report. And to give you a sneak on the data, and like I said, I haven't committed all this stuff to memory quite yet because we're presenting it next week. But right now, they're still at 82% of students saying that they have a Facebook account. So for 8 in 10 people to say they have something says to me it's not dead. But when we dig a little bit deeper and we look at how active students are, we've seen a 20% or so decrease in daily or more usage by students using Facebook. So I said this last year, and I'll say it again this year, that Facebook is to a high school student or a first-year college student what LinkedIn is to professionals. You have one because everybody has one, and you have one because you have to have one, but then you're not necessarily as active on it as other people. That's where things like expression engines like Instagram come in, where students are able to post pictures and post videos. We saw a 40% increase in active usership, which is again daily or more on Instagram, from last year's study to this year's study. So Instagram and is definitely picking up, but what's interesting is, Nicole, who owns Instagram?
Facebook.
Facebook. So students are leaving Facebook to go to Facebook. So shrewd move by Facebook to make sure that they're still kind of being active and they're still staying relevant. It's just on a different portion of their platform. So yes, the use of Facebook directly has declined, and that's something to be aware of as you figure out how you're going to implement your Facebook groups and pages and all that kind of stuff. But what's your visual content strategy? Because your visual content strategy is going to be what drives your Instagram content more than necessarily your Facebook content. And oh yeah, by the way, when you post to Instagram, you can also push it to Facebook anyway. So you've got those features available to you. So I guess that looking at the trends is it's not just where students are, but it's where they're doing their college search. And Facebook is still definitely a player. And you have to think about parents too.
Of course, and I think that that seems to have been it's been a movement, I think, that I'm hearing more and more at admissions conferences too, is what are you doing? Do you have separate pages for parents? How are you involving them in the conversation? Because so many of them are online. And I know here at Champlain, I manage our Facebook community, and I see a lot of parents trying to get access in there. So that does kind of highlight a need and a way to try to work that into our strategy. But I like the idea of a visual content strategy. I never really thought about it that way, but that's a really good point of not just figuring out what we're putting out there, but what kind of clearly they're drawn towards this visual component, and I think we're even seeing that with our Facebook posts and posts elsewhere is employing more of that visual component. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at your engagement of your content on your Facebook page, let's say, and this goes to the Facebook algorithm and all this kind of stuff, and I'm not even going to be claimed to be an expert on how all that exactly works, but posts of videos and pictures get more play than text-based comments. That's just a reality of it. How that works in the back end, I'll let somebody tweet specifics about that. Hashtag HigherEdLive. I think that it's just understanding how students are utilizing the tools, and the reality is think about what they are or aren't using for their college search. Is we look at that students, for the most part, are still going to Facebook when they're looking for college information prior to enrollment, which again is really the end game here. But it's another point of they're not active on it every day, but they're most active on Facebook. And you got to be fair to looking at the process. Students don't go on any site every day just to look at college information. They're going onto sites to look at funny memes and cat videos and making fun of their favorite football team or what have you. Whereas but the sites that they do go to for college information are still Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Interesting component, and maybe this will shift to maybe more of our digital tools component, but Snapchat actually moved into kind of that category of things that students do use. But again, they're not using it for engaging with your school's brand. They're using tools like Snapchat to engage with students at the school. And that's something that you can't, and again, you just kind of further, when social media first came out, it was you've lost control of the conversation, all you can do is be an active component of it. Now you've even lost visibility to the conversation in a lot of ways. The best you can do is, provide opportunities for your current students to tout the horn for you. I think about University of New Hampshire does a great job of having their Instagram and their Twitter and their Facebook and their Snapchat strategies all kind of aligned together, so that if you're a current student looking at this stuff, it's all consistent. You're getting the real perspective of students, and that's why students would use a Snapchat or a Yik Yak or one of those types of tools is not to connect with your brand. It's to connect with students who are currently enrolled at your school. And that's when you get into student affairs and just making sure that students are happy and finding success, because then they're going to tell positive stories about your school.
Yes, yeah, that's when it goes internal and actually making sure that your school has happy stories to share and that students are putting those out there. Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit about digital, and I think it is a good time to shift a little bit into that. Talk a little bit about what students are using digital platforms for, what kind of information that they're looking for.
Yeah, so we did a list of all the different college search sites and tools that students can use to find colleges and that sort of stuff, and as you could probably imagine, working in higher ed, it's pretty fragmented. You probably get calls every day from different sites with student information and all this sort of stuff. And on the college admissions professionals Facebook page right now, there's a new site that's up that everybody's up in arms about and all this sort of stuff. And the reality is that these sites are not going to go away. And honestly, the positive side of it is the spirit of entrepreneurialism that people want to help make the process better for students. So ultimately, the Chegg perspective is that anything that helps students navigate the college search process in a more efficient way and get information to help them make better decisions is a good thing for everybody. So it's just a matter of kind of understanding, having your finger on the pulse of where students are and what tools that they actually do use. So up at the top of the list, honestly, is a schools.edu. I think that students still, and again, that's another thing that was dead 3 years ago. It was dead. The .edu, dead. Rest in peace. .edu. But the reality is that's not true. I think that students go to it because they're online first, mobile first, based on the research. So making sure your site is mobile optimized. Responsive design is key to making sure that you're visible to students. And that's where all this stuff is linked. If you post something to Twitter with a link to something on your website, chances are students are using Twitter on their phone. So they click they click through the link, and then they go to a page that's broken because it's not a responsive link, or it's not mobile optimized. Then you've already kind of fallen short. So that's where all these things are linked. Mm-hmm. But with your .edu, it's important that you think about it as a marketing vehicle for your prospective students, and make sure that prospective students can get to where they're looking for as quickly and easily as possible. But you also need to understand and respect that they're not going to just take your word for it. Students are shopping online just like you and I shop online. Think about when I went to go we bought a house 3 years ago, and I went to go buy my first lawnmower, right? Never bought a lawnmower before in my entire life because I never had to. I was just had one. It was my mom's lawnmower, so now I had to buy my own lawnmower. I didn't just go to Lowe's.com and look up the lawnmowers that they had. I did consumer reports. I looked at the different models that were available. Your school is like a student's lawnmower, right? It's their first lawnmower, right? And they want to compare them side by side, and it's a lot easier to compare schools side by side on a site that aggregates that content as opposed to kind of looking at sites side by side, because each college website is going to have its own personality. You're going to showcase your institution's brand, and that's something that you get when you're on your .edu. But when you want to look at just the nuts and bolts side by side, you can't do it looking at school sites side by side. So that's why sites like Chegg, like College Prowler or Niche.com are so popular, is because students can do that in a apples to apples comparison kind of way. So I think that from just looking at the industry perspective, it's very fragmented. There's lots of different sites that students are using, and again, in the report we publish next week, we'll have the full showcase of which ones are most popular and which ones are what they use them for. But that's to kind of give you the idea that college search sites are definitely valued and prevalent, and in addition to your schools.edu. So it's important to have a firm digital marketing strategy that incorporates social, incorporates understanding digital tools, and then a strong mobile strategy to kind of overlay on top of all of that.
Well, and you're starting to make me think about a question that I hadn't thought about before in preparing for this is, as somebody who is in sort of this role that I have to keep an eye on our digital and social media components and kind of existence out there, we in admissions, we in admissions only have a set amount of time we can dedicate to this. And so when there's such a large amount of different sites that they can be on, I know you stress the importance of having the strategy, but as far as just knowing where to go, I mean, is it just as basic as keeping an eye out and knowing these new sites that are popping up, or how do we keep on top of all of this, which I know is a larger question, but yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's a real answer to that, but it's just making me think, we are always hearing about these new sites, and it's some you can have a presence on, like Chegg you can have a presence on, but others it's a little bit harder to really develop that admissions voice, but I realize that's also balancing it out with the student review side. So
yeah, and I think that what we need to consider, and I do not want this to turn into a Chegg sales pitch and what have you, because that's the last thing that I want to do on Martin Luther King Day is actually work. So the reality is that when you work with a company like Chegg, what Chegg does is aggregates not just students on Chegg.com, but any site in the top college search sites that students are using. So, in a way, it's kind of like a set it and forget it kind of thing, where you don't have to worry about what sites students are using, because it's not necessarily about what sites students are using to an admissions office. It's more so, how many students am I missing to add to my pipeline? And by partnering with a company like Chegg, you get access to over 10 of the top sites that are listed on the ones that students are using. So rather than having to try to get all the students who are on Niche and all the students who are on US News and all the students who are on Chegg, those are all kind of delivered to you. Now with respect to managing the content, like on a site like Niche, student reviews, that sort of stuff, hardest thing in the world for me as an admissions officer perspective, which I'm sure you've been through, is you go on there and you see a negative review. You go on there and you see a bunch of C- and Ds and all that kind of stuff. And it can be tough, because you're like, oh man, we got to do better, all that sort of stuff. So there's solutions. One is get all your student tour guides, your Twitter birds, or whatever they're called now, get them to go on and post their reviews. The cool thing about Niche is that when they do that, they also enter to win a scholarship, so you're helping them pay for school, which is nice, and you're ensuring that the positive views are balancing the negative views. The other thing that you do is you address the things that students are concerned about. If a student's actually concerned about parking on campus, or they're concerned about the food in the dining hall, that sort of stuff, look into it a little bit. Retention is, and I hate to say retention is everybody's job, because if it's everybody's job, then it's nobody's job. But retention is your job. You brought them here as a prospective student. You should care about the experience that they're having. And someone who's been in higher ed for more than 3 or 4 years, you tend to have more of that passion for that. So addressing those issues, and I think to understand what sites are the most important for you to monitor, that's where the social admissions report comes in. Because we, to add to the context of the study, we have an independent researcher who's a former researcher from Yahoo that actually does the study for us, and then we work with her on the presentation and all that kind of stuff. So it's not necessarily a Chegg study. It's a study that Chegg and University will work together to put together. So when we publish the list, next week when the full Orange Notes comes out, you'll be able to see, what sites should I be worrying about, which sites are not necessarily as impactful. And it's not going to be that surprising, to be honest with you. You can kind of know, based on when you visit a site and not visit a site, which ones are relevant, which ones are reputable, based on user experience, based on accuracy of info, all that kind of stuff. So I would say that, your gut probably is pretty good, and then on top of that, you just pull the list as a guide. These are the ones that are the most important, and which ones of these are Chegg partners? Okay, so I don't have to worry about these ones because Chegg's got that, and then which ones are not? Okay, now let's look at those.
Awesome. And I think you made a lot of wonderful points in that, but one of the points that I want to just highlight too is I think this really does sort of elevate the importance of the role of a community manager, because you're right. I mean, they are involved in enrollment, they're involved in retention, they're involved in so many conversations, and I'm very lucky, and I would encourage any other admission counselor out there that's in charge of or involved in social and digital strategy to work closely with people in marketing. I have a colleague whose name is also Nicole, and she's our community manager, and if I didn't have daily conversations with her just trying to figure out all these pieces and make sure that we're putting out a cohesive voice and addressing concerns of our current students, then I don't know what kind of space we'd be in. So just want to encourage those out there to make sure you're making that connection, because I think enrollment and marketing have always been close, but nowadays with such a huge digital component, I think it's even more important to make sure that that's a cohesive conversation.
Yeah, and honestly, and you can tweet this, it's not about protecting your brand. It's about supporting student success. And I mean, and that's 142 characters right now. So I would say that the advantage that the advantage that you have if you're putting out, if you're developing a campus community that puts out a lot of positive content about your school, that means you've got a happy campus community where students are doing well in the classroom and they're progressing well to graduation and they're becoming successful alumni that are giving back to the school. #FreeGil. So the challenge is doing that, obviously, and that takes being not just an online community manager, but being a campus community manager. And I think that by supporting positive outcomes on your campus, you're going to see positive results in your social outreach.
That's very, very true. You've brought up some really wonderful points. I want to kind of make sure that we're covering everything because I know we talked about a lot the other day in preparation for this show. But I guess you talked about it in each of the different areas and sort of platforms, but just as a whole, I guess, following a student from point A to point B, do you find that students are on digital more towards the earlier stages and then really kind of coming into social towards the later half when they're really trying to make their decision, or you think it's sort of back and forth? I mean, I don't know if it's easy to kind of peg it down, but did you get any insight of that from your research?
Yes. So you are right. You can't specifically peg it down and be like, current or admitted students are only going to be on X network at specific time. It's not that clean and easy. I think what it is looking at, the digital sources like the Chegs and the U.S. Newses and that sort of thing are more for informational gathering. I think that, we learned that at Chegg over time that, social tools are great, but only if it's in support of what students are actually using and what they use them for. So, a site like Zinch, for example, before it was fully integrated into the Chegg experience, was, you've got the best of the best from a Zinch.com are now on Chegg. So things like, scholarship search and comparing schools side by side and, making, informed decisions based on that type of information is what students are looking for. What they're not looking for when they're just generally looking at schools is talking to somebody. The last thing, when you're researching stuff online, you don't necessarily want to talk to somebody. You just want to do your general research. It's the same thing when students are doing college information as you're buying a car. You don't want to talk to a salesman when you're looking at consumer reports. You want to look at the actual, you want to be able to do a lot of the research on your own. Whereas social tools, students are going to go there more so when they're getting ready to kind of make decisions, and they want to make sure that, students on the campus are like them, and students are going to like them, and those are the kinds of things that students are looking for on the social platforms, which can be easier. And this comes to now, there's actually even now a fourth distinction, right? There's digital, there's mobile, there's social, but with social, there's also, the private messaging component to it. That, Facebook is public. Twitter, for the most part, is public. Yeah, you can have private messages and you can have, protected tweets and whatnot, but, they're not fleeting like something on Snapchat is. They're not hidden or guarded like stuff like Yik Yak is. So, students are there is that private messaging component that is growing. Like I said, close to 30% of students, not to give away too much of the data, but close to 30% of students this past cycle have used Snapchat when deciding where to go to schools. That's a significant number. A third of your students using Snapchat. I used to be on the Snapchat is dumb bandwagon, not going to lie. And it is dumb for you to use it as an integral part of your marketing strategy. But do some types of campaigns to get your students driving Snapchat conversations and being active, because that's who your prospective students are looking for. Now, with your Facebook presence, there is more, and again, we'll get into the data next Tuesday, but there is more of an affinity to, when you're on Facebook, that's more official college-y stuff. That's when they're more likely to engage with your institution's brand because, again, they're at the family reunion, so they want their mom to know they're looking at Champlain College, and they want that sort of stuff. So, I think that there's the timeliness of it is, digital tools are more information gathering, social tools are more decision making generally, and then private messaging apps are more likely to be a driver on that decision engine, especially in the future. And this is something that, again, I don't have a crystal ball, can't tell you what's going to happen tomorrow specifically, but just looking at the trends and looking at what's happened over the past couple of years, Facebook is going to continue to be kind of that family reunion for a little while, and so students will have a presence there, and their parents will have a presence there. But private messaging apps and instantaneous messaging apps and that sort of stuff are going to be more of a component that students use that you're going to have even less control over. You can have your institution presence, and there's probably some really creative things you can do at like an open house, and get your athletics departments and that sort of stuff to do things. But in a world where you need everything to be measurable and you need everything to have strong ROI, it's probably it's still the general rule is focus on where the majority of students are, where they want to engage with you, and that's your Snapchat is not going to be that, nor is LinkedIn, nor is Vine, for example.
Awesome. And before I ask the next question, I do just want to put out there to our viewers that if you have any questions for Gil, please use the hashtag HigherEdLive with your question, and we'll make sure to get to it. Or you could probably use hashtag Gil, and he'll probably see it too.
Maybe.
But let's shoot for HigherEdLive. Yeah.
Let's get that one trending.
Yeah, exactly. So, we talked a little bit about digital and about social, and you touched upon mobile, but I'd like to revisit it a little bit more because I think it's pretty well established out there that if you're not already making sure that you're accessible on mobile, then you're already behind, and yet we still tend to see institutions that are pretty far behind. So I know you talked about responsive design, but what else should colleges really be thinking about when it comes to mobile access and what students are using mobile for in this process?
Yeah, and I think it starts with you got to start focusing on mobile. 80% of students or so have accessed social media on a mobile device, which even that number seems low to me. Some students just don't want to admit it, or maybe they just got confused by the answer. Who knows? But 60% of students said that they access college sites on a mobile device at least weekly. So they are actively looking at college information. Again, students aren't going to be researching schools on an hourly and daily basis, so really looking at active is more so looking at weekly. But what we find interesting is over 70% of students, closer to 80% actually, said that their experience on a school's mobile site is only okay, if not poor. So that to me says that students need more support via their mobile sites via a mobile site. So you think about, and this was probably 3-4 years ago now at this point, Noel Levitt's published a study, the E-Expectations report they publish every year, and one of the questions they asked one year was, would you take a school off your list if you had a bad experience on their website? And it was close to 90% of students said yes, they would. They would cross a school off of their list if they had a negative experience on their website. Regardless of how good your English program is, they're not going to go study English there if you have a bad website. So you can only imagine that that's probably 4 or 5 years later now translated down into on a mobile experience. If it's a bad mobile experience, it's a bad experience, period. So I think before we get into any type of like tools and whistles and bells and things that mobile sites should have, you need to start talking about having a better mobile environment, because there are just so many colleges out there still that do not have a good mobile experience for prospective students. And it's not about just calling up a company to develop you an app like that. I feel like that's the easy solution is, oh well, just pay somebody to develop an app. And yes, there's value in a mobile app if you have the right strategy for it and you have the right goals for that tool. But it's about making sure that you have making sure you have a strong mobile strategy in general before you even start building an app. And that's one of those students, and based on our research, students will download an app from a school, but it'll be for a specific purpose. They're not going to download an app just to view the general info that they should be able to get off your website. You need to focus on having a strong mobile website first, and then when you develop an app, make sure you're developing it with the goals of the student in mind, and develop the app accordingly. And again, that's a lot of this will come out in the report, but traditional things like filing an application, 30% of students said that they would do that on a mobile device. That's a third of the students. Students, and I just pulled up the numbers here, close to 70% say that they would download an app to stay updated on admissions information like deadlines and orientation. So there is a need for a mobile app for incoming students. 70% of students said that they would. And I lied. I said it was 30%. It's closer to 50% that would submit an application. So even more. So it's just important to think about what students want to do with a mobile presence, and what can you do on your mobile site versus what you would need to make a student download an app for. Really, the difference between a site and a mobile app is, if you're going to develop an app, that means you want to use some of the functions that are inherently built into the student's phone. Whereas, things that a student can just do on your website, maybe it's just a matter of having, a strong mobile website. And I think it's important because 70% of students say that their experience is just okay, if not bad, which to me says that they're not impressed and you need to keep working on it.
Definitely. Yeah, it always, whenever we get to the conversation of, it originally was about websites, and now it makes me think of it when we talk about mobile accessibility for current students and for prospective students, is there's an XKCD cartoon comic, and it's what I want to find on a college's site and what I can actually find on a college's site, and it's a Venn diagram, and I think the middle is just like location and name of the school, and it's made as a joke, but honestly I really think that it's like a good starting point to look at it and kind of acclimate yourself with, oh, right, of course students want to, prospective families want to know directions and parking information. Of course, current students want to be able to access, of course, Cali, or whatever the case might be, but it is really important to think about not just how do we make the mobile access pretty, but are we actually giving things that are of real value? And I tend to agree with you. I think it's important to make sure that it's available on the mobile site and not just immediately move to an app solution when that's not necessarily the right thing.
And this is probably a cheap plug for the M Stoner folks, who are a sponsor of the show. And, you need help with creative development and branding. There's somebody that could probably help you with it that's actually pretty freaking good at it. So I would say, start there and look at, things you can't do yourself, you get experts to come in and help you for. And I know it's one of those like, oh, it's easy for me to say because I don't work at a school and I don't have budget issues and that sort of stuff. But the reality is that it's going to cost you more in time and effort and resources. If it's going to do that, then you may as well seek outside support. So, don't necessarily try to do it all yourself. It's like on the inquiry generation side. Like, you're not going to find every single student who's researching schools across the web by just spraying banner ads on every website that a student might be on. It's more important to find the sites that students are actually using to find college info and bring those students into your recruitment. So it's similar. Not everybody's a branding expert. Not everybody's an expert on what site visitors are looking for. So seek that help. And there's white papers out there, not orange notes, but there's white papers that people are using that are published by various firms on those best practices and things like that. So do a little research and learning before just kind of mocking up a new site and trying to work. And obviously, working at a college, there's a lot more politics involved. You've got student affairs, you've got financial aid, you've got the president's office, you've got the communications office. You've got to worry about that stuff too. But at the end of the day, just send them the link to this show and say Gil Rogers said that your .edu is a prospective student marketing channel above everything else, and that we need to make sure that those students are served when they visit our site, whether it's on a desktop computer, on a tablet, on a mobile phone. It doesn't matter. They should be able. They need to be able to do it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And you just got a shout out of appreciation, by the way, for discussing mobile ready on Higher Ed Live. So thank you to that. Thank you to you from somebody watching today. And just a reminder, if you have questions, we have a few more minutes left with Gil, so please use the Higher Ed Live hashtag if you have questions. But since we're kind of moving towards wrapping up, Gil, what other thoughts or suggestions or tips, what else can we hope to gain from the social admissions report coming up in about a week, and anything else you want to kind of leave the viewers with today?
Yeah, I think that, again, at the end of the day, it's with regard to your digital marketing strategy, which is digital tools, social tools, mobile technology, private messaging apps, all those things fall under the bucket of digital tools. The reality is what we need to focus on is what's going to help students make the most informed decision and understand our institution's personality. And a big way of doing that is understanding where students are doing their research and what they're using those different channels for. And that's what the social admissions report is all about, is about helping to bring a little bit of clarity to that. So that we're not just chasing every shiny new ball that may come out. It's really about taking advantage of this knowledge and helping it to inform your overall digital marketing strategy. So hopefully, if you download the tip sheet, which is available on edu.chegg.com, or just shoot me a tweet at Gil Rogers, and I'll send you the link. Either one. it's about taking those the tips that are available within these reports, which again are completely free, and helping to shape your recruitment strategy to put students first and make sure that you're understanding what their needs are and what information they're looking for. Because the drum that I keep beating on LinkedIn and across the web is being more efficient with our outreach, and honestly not spending more time and more resources, but focusing on the things that actually do work. So hopefully what the social admissions report does and what future research does is help you to understand what works, what you should continue to focus and invest in, so you can trim away from things that aren't necessarily working, so you can either further invest in things that are working, or even better, big picture, pie in the sky vision, roll back the cost of higher education so that your tuition is more affordable. So think about ways that you can actually save money in your recruitment and pass that savings on to the consumer, which the consumer being students who attend your school. So that's just my thoughts. I don't know. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you covered all of it, and you really kind of looped it back into, I think, one more thought that we really had been discussing is, a frequently said mantra on this show, and I think in social media and higher ed, is goals before tools. But what I like about the social admissions report is it's talking about, okay, well, what tools can help us to pursue those goals? And I think that that's a nice relationship to be able to develop, and great research to have accessible. So. Just want to put in that extra plug for your social admissions report. And also, I'm glad you brought up the e-expectations report, because I think anybody who's in higher ed, all right, these lights are, there we go. Anybody who's in higher ed should be making sure to just read even a little bit into the e-expectations report as well, because there is a lot of really interesting and important data in there that people should be knowledgeable about. But
those people at No 11s, they're smart. They know what they're doing.
They do know what they're doing. They absolutely do. And so do you guys, and your partnership with the university. So hopefully you'll have a lot of people joining you for that webinar. But I just want to thank you once again. We don't have any questions right now, but of course, anybody, if they want to reach out to, like you said, they can reach you at Gil Rogers, or use the Higher Ed Live hashtag. So thank you so much, Gil, for joining us today.
Of course, anytime.
And I appreciate it's all about the student, because it absolutely is. That's what we're doing this for in the end.
Boom.
All right, so thank you once again, and thank you as always to our program sponsors, M. Stoner, Abilene Christian University, Chegg Enrollment Services, I always want to say solutions, and to Welcome to College. Coming up next on Higher Ed Live tomorrow is host Ryan Catherwood, who will speak with J. Thomas Forbes, CEO of the Indiana University Alumni Association, Keith Liu from Brigham Young University, and Jeff Shands from RPI about the state of alumni engagement. Get reminders about this and other great shows by subscribing to the Higher Ed Live newsletter. Browse the archives at higheredlive.com, or subscribe to the Higher Ed Live podcast on iTunes. I'm Nicole Lentini, back next month with more Admissions Live. Thanks, everybody.